Hello and welcome back to the Toolkit for Traders YouTube channel where we give you the tools for trading success, and we're here for our 8th lesson in the Code Your Own EA's programming tutorial, and today we are looking at debugging, specifically backtesting and how we use backtesting for our debugging processes. So it's the 8th lesson in the course and let's get right into it. So today we're looking at backtesting, and we're using backtesting not necessarily to test how good our strategy is, how much money that it potentially could have won in historic environment. What we're really looking at today is, does the EA work how we expect it to work, and does that give us clues to errors that we might have made in our code? So we're going to look at how we backtest EA. So I'll go through a few steps that you need to do if you've never done that before. And then we're going to look at correcting the issues that were deliberately left in the code from last time that meant we had a lot of open orders open very, very quickly in succession and not closed. So we're going to solve that problem. So the quote for today's lesson is, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. It's from a very famous song, I'm sure a lot of you've heard of it, by Billy Ocean from 1985. And what it's really about is, when things don't go exactly how you plan them to go, do you go with it? Do you pull your bootstraps up and get into it, or do you give up? Because coding, it doesn't always go the way you want it. You do sometimes think that you've done something amazing, you've coded something brilliant, and it absolutely doesn't work, and you've got to be able to not get disheartened by that, and either fix the problem or start something new. So when it gets tough with your coding, do you stop or do you get going? So we're going to head straight into the meta editor today. In previous lessons I've always done a bit of a presentation before we do that, but today I think we're going to spend almost all the time in the meta editor and in the MT4 platform, debugging and correcting errors. So it's going to be really useful information nonetheless. So let's get to that. So we're back now with the MT4 terminal, and we've got our lesson 7 from the previous lesson, and we did that back test before, but I didn't really show you how you would need to do that. So in order to backtest, it's fairly simple. You go to view at the top here, and then you come down and you have to open up the strategy tester, and you can see there's a shortcut here, Control R, if you want to get really fancy. So typically what you'll see when you start is the terminal, which is for trading, and it has, if you're running any expert advisors, it'll have messages in here on the experts tab. But if you want to backtest, you typically need to close the terminal, go to view, and open up the strategy tester. Now, before you can get all excited and run your strategy tester, you need historic data. This is something in MT4 that you need to do beforehand. So if you click Tools and History Center and the shortcut F2, if you want to be quick, click on there, and it will open up this panel here, which you can see has lots of symbols, all the symbols from your broker, and you can choose a drop down and choose a symbol. So you can see where you've got a little plus symbol on the actual symbol, that shows that you've got some history data there. So it's going to tell you, and you can see the colored icons there showing that I've got data in here under M1 and M15. Now I've already got some data in there. I've got what I need for today, but let's say we want to do this for USD JPY for today. So if you double click on USD JPY, it will then load up, give you that symbol, and it will load up, and you can see they're all grey now. So we need some data now. What I suggest you do is you start at 1 minute and you double click there, and you can see we've got 1 minute data. It instantly goes green, which looks great, but actually we've only got 2048 records. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see that only actually goes back to the 9th of December 2020. Today's date is the 7th of February. So we've only got 3 months worth of data there. And that might not be, depending on your strategy, much use to you. So we want some more data. So if you just double click the history data again, you can see now we've gone up to 34,000 records. And that takes us back to, that's still only going back to December, so it's updated again, but it's not really giving us anymore. So we're going to double click again and again, and eventually, and if you click download instead, so basically what this is data from your broker. So your broker will give you 3 months free data. If you then click download, it will give you this warning, and you're going to get data instead of from your broker. You're going to get it from MetaQuotes, which is the software developers of the MT4 platform. If you do this, it gives you this warning because obviously data can be slightly different. In fact, with Forex, it quite often is different between brokers. So there will be some differences, but for the purposes of broadly seeing whether an EA works, this is absolutely fine. You don't need anything better than this. So again, if you just click OK, it will then start to download, and this process takes a bit of time, especially the first time that it's run. So we'll give that a bit of time to run. But basically what you should see when this is finished is we should see quite a significant number of records up here, 10 or 100 times more than what we've got here. So I'm just going to click stop now because I actually don't need the data for USD JPY. And we'll go back to the 1 minute data I have for the pound, and here's one I made earlier. You can see here I've got 78 million records. So, and if I use a scroll to go all the way to the bottom, you can see the year goes all the way back, in fact, to 2001. It looks to be when I have some decent data. It does jump to 1993, but I think that's a consequence of having some monthly data in there as well. But we've got M1 data here for a very long stretch of time, which is great. So now we've got it in the M1. I suggest that you just click through all the other time frames, and what that does is it forces the platform to recalculate all of these time frames based on the M1, which is the line that you have all the records for. So that gives you the best data quality for your testing. At this stage, data quality isn't that important, but it's an easy way to get that. So now we've got a full green bar for our pound data. We can then click close, and we've got our data ready. Last thing you have to do then is to choose your EA that you want in here, and obviously we're using the last lesson's number 7. We've got our symbol, which you can select here. Now it will only let you select the symbols that are in your watch list, so if you want to test on a different symbol, you've got to add it to your watch list first. You've got the method. Now you've got every tick, which is obviously as we have minute data, it's actually going to be M1, every M1 tick, if you like. So 1 minute tick, so not quite as precise as live trading. You've also got control points, which is if we're testing here on the M15, it's gonna run the data on the M5, which is the nearest less time frame, and it's going to use that. So that's considerably faster than every tick. And for the purposes of here, which is debugging, we don't suspect at this point it's because we're not using every tick. So I'm going to use control points because it will be faster. You can also use open prices only. You only use this if you control specifically in your EA for bar opening, and you're only opening and closing orders on that bar opening. That would be extremely fast for those kinds of EAs, but most EAs do something, whether it's a trailing stop or something like that, that means you need a bit more granularity. So we'll use control points for now. You can set your date range. You have to click the box here for use date, then choose your range. So here I've only got 2 days here because I'm only trying to test it to see whether it works. And crucially here you've got visual mode. So if you run visual mode, it will run it through visually on the chart, and you can set the speed here. You can pause, and you can also skip to. Problems with visual mode is that first of all it's much slower than doing it without. So if you run a back test here without it, it will be much faster. You select your time frame over here under the period, and you also can set the spread. Now you need to be realistic with this, and also note that this is going to be in points, so it's up to you how you do that. Again, where we are just testing the EA to see if it works at all, this is not as important, so I'm not going to put too much effort into that. We just want to see, does the EA take and open and close trades when we want it to? So first thing I'm going to do is a test without visual mode on, and you can see that runs very quickly, and the graph looks fantastic, but as we saw last time, all the trades close on, in fact, if you look at the results, they all close on stop. Here, if you look at type, they all close at stop, so they're not closing properly, and we've got a lot of orders open. It just so happens that they all are in profit at the end. That means this EA looks like that. They could have easily gone the other way and been a disaster. So we need to get visual mode, and we tick that there, and we need to see what it is. So if you remember with this EA, we are using the momentum indicator, and we'll just leave that pause for now. If I click start now, it's going to, and I'm just going to click pause straight away. You can see it loads up a brand new chart in the default visuals for MT4, which is a little bit annoying. But you can see here we've already got the beginnings of our problem. Now, you can't see the indicator that we were using, so again, we do want to see that. So we're going to pull up the oscillator and the momentum indicator and drop that on the chart. And remember that we're looking to, if it's below, we're looking to sell. So you can see here we've already opened a lot of sell orders. So that's interesting that we're open sell orders. So we're going in the right direction here. We've still got the comment up here saying go short. So everything's going in the right direction. But you can see here a lot of trades have opened already as soon as this started. And you can see here, in fact, as we look through the results tab, we've opened 3 orders at midnight, 2 orders a minute later, another 3 orders a minute after that. And you can see in this first it's just these first 8 seconds of the simulation, we've opened 21 orders. So this is, it looks like we're going to rapidly open all these orders until we run out of money to open more. So let's see how that goes. So we can slow it right down and press play, and it's going to go very slow. And I'll zoom in here, and you can see we're opening even more orders coming in. We're now on 33, 35. So more orders are opening. We've moved over a bar, and again we are opening orders even still. So something's going wrong here. We're opening too many bars, and none of them are closing. We're not getting any counter reverse signals here, so it's not necessarily to do with the closing. So we'll see what happens if we speed this up a bit. We know all these orders are going to open, but let's just see whether the momentum indicator goes above that 100 line and whether these orders close. So I'm going to go to 31. It's important that you only go to 31. If you go to 32, you'll experience that it's extremely fast and it's hard to keep up with. So I'll leave it at 31, and you can see here we've now crossed over. We've had a bar close above the 100 line, and none of these orders, they should have been long. In fact, it says go long. This bar hasn't closed here. It should have been go long, and that's not happened. So that's a problem, because again, not only we open too many orders, but we're not closing when we cross over that line. So we can now run this simulation. I'll show you what happens when you put this speed to 32. It goes far too fast, for that. And you can see here actually the indicator that we put up, so we can get rid of that. Now you can go back and review the trades here with the actual indicator using. We use the 20 period here, which I didn't use in the last one, so it might have been slightly different. But you can see we had this crossover here. I'll just bring up the cursor. We had this crossover here, and we've not closed it. All of these trades should have been closed, and they should have closed for a loss, because most of these are below what the price is in about this region. So it wouldn't have been a good start, and we've also opened too many. So we need to then have a look at our code and think about why that might be. So I'm going to go back to our code. I'm going to select File, Save As, and I'm going to put this on the 8th lesson. And we are going to look at why we might do that. So hopefully some of you had a chance to think about why this might have been. So there's a couple of problems. The first one is that we're opening too many trades. So you can see here, if the current momentum is above the threshold, we've got the comment go long, and we've then opened the order. So there's no limit here on the number. We've not put a limit here on the number of orders that have to be. We've not said it also there needs to be no open orders. We've actually just opened the order. So there's nothing stopping a million orders coming out here as long as the momentum is above. And this is also going to happen on every tick. Remember that the on tick function happens every single tick that comes, and every price change that comes onto your chart, this function stream here is going to run. So we need to do a few things. We need to set it so that we only open new trades on a new bar, and that reduces the number of entries for us and keeps it consistent. And the other thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we don't open another buy order whilst we've got one open. And you can see here actually, interestingly, every time we open a new order, we set the buy ticket to the new order, so we're losing the information in the order that was before. So when then we go to close the buy order, when we get the reverse signal, we in fact have only we've only got the ticket for the last order. So that again is another problem. So how do we fix this? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we are only opening one order at a time. So we see here, when we start the EA, we have the buy ticket set as 0. And when we come here and the momentum's above the threshold, we have another buy ticket. Now we don't actually just want it to take the order whenever whenever the momentum is just above the threshold. We want it to do when it actually crosses the threshold. So in order to do that, we need to look at what the momentum was in the previous bar and to see whether it's, say, below the threshold, and then look at the current bar and see whether it's gone above that threshold. So the way we do that is, you can see here we've got the double and current momentum. I'm going to create another variable here. We're going to call this double previous momentum, and I'm going to use exactly the same code here almost for the last one. So here we've got the I momentum, the indicator, the symbol, the period's the same period for the indicator, the same price that we're using, but instead of being the previous bar, we're going to go back a further bar. So we've now got two bits of information. We've got what was the bar before, as that's the 1, and the momentum of that, and what was the bar before that, because that's number 2. 0 is the current bar. I'm not using the very, very current bar, because as it's still developing. That bar usually is still developing, and I only want to use that once that the bar is closed. So we'll not use that. So we start with 1 and 2. We'll not use the 0th bar. So we've got the current momentum and the previous momentum. So now we need to extend our requirements here to take this into account. So if our current momentum is above the threshold, and we use 2 ampersands here to do that, which was in the logic part, we want the previous momentum needs to be below the threshold. So this is the basic form of a crossover in EA terms, that this current momentum has crossed over this threshold. The momentum has crossed over the threshold because it is now above, whereas before it was below. So it can do nothing else but have crossed over. So now we've limited our go long signal to the crossover, and we need to do the same with our short signal. So if the current momentum is below the threshold and the previous momentum is above the threshold, again we've got now a downward crossover, and we can use that. So I'll click compile, make sure I've made no errors there. We've got a comment, and we're doing opening up orders here. So that's fine. That works pretty well. We now need to, looking at this, we've got a buy ticket. Now, every time there's an upward crossover, we are going to open a buy. So that means that provided we only do this on a new bar, we shouldn't do this twice, and assuming as well that the order close works for our buys and our sells. So we need to now limit the EA to only run on a new bar. So as you can see, we've got the onTick function, which is inbuilt into the EA, and this is called every time there's a new price tick come in. In MQL4, there is no default function for on bar. What happens when there's a new bar? So we actually have to create this ourselves. So we're going to create a function that's called for when a new bar is created, and I'm going to call this on bar. So it's very similar, as you can see here, and when the on bar function is called, it will execute the code inside here. So we're going to put a comment here. So when called, the code here will execute. So now we need to put into our onTick function, we need to put in, first of all, we're going to take all of our code for opening and closing a trade. We're going to take it out of the onTick function, and we're going to put it into the onBar function, because we only want this to happen when there's a new bar. So now the challenge is really to get this onBar function to only take place when a new bar is created. So how do we do that? How do we detect that? So we need to create another global variable, and this is it's a variable of the date time type, and we didn't cover that in the variables, but it's just a way that MQL4 stores time data. We're going to call this G, and I'm going to call it bar time, and I'm not going to give it a value just at the start. So we'll compile that, and we've got no errors. That's good. So we've got our bar time. So what we now need to do is use this bar time to detect if a new bar is created. So we're going to say what we need to do then is to get the bar that's furthest to the right on your screen. We're going to get the time that opened. So the way we do that is we're going to say we're going to use iTime, which is kind of like an indicator for MQL4. And if I just show you the, oh, that's the wrong one. Just show you the reference documentation for that. You can see we have it returns the time value for the bars of specified symbol with time frame and shift. So we want to know what the current bar is what time it was opened at. So we put in the current symbol as we have before. We put in the current time frame as we have before. Excuse me. And we want the 0 bar. We want to know the furthest bar on the right. When was that app opened? So we'll give that the value date. I'll give it a variable. So we'll call this, let's call it the right bar. Right bar time. So now we've got right bar time has the time of the furthest bar on the right. And we need an if statement here. And we're going to work out if right bar time is not equal to, so we've used an exclamation mark and an equal sign. If it's not equal to the global variable that we have up here for bar time, then we have a new bar. Because what we're going to do with bar time is we're going to store in there the current furthest right bar time. So if we put in here bar time is equal to right bar time, and then in here we can call our on bar function. So we have here just to go through these because it might have been a bit complicated and we've used a few things we've not used before. I'm going to take this out to save complication. So what we've got here is we've got a new variable, and I'll put this in comments. New variable is a local variable to hold the current open time of the furthest right bar. So the furthest right bar, so the I time returns the open time of a bar. We use the current symbol, the current period, and 0 because the furthest right bar is the 0, 1 along. And you start at the right and you work towards the left, so it's the 0, 1 along. It's going to return that time. Now, if that time is not the same as G bar time, which on the very first run, G bar time doesn't have a value, so they won't be the same, so this will run. After that, we're going to give G bar time the same value as the right bar time. And so in the next tick, they're going to be the same. So this code is not going to run because they're going to be the same. And this is checking if they're not the same. So we're not going to run this code until a new bar appears on the right, at which point G bar time will not be the same as that. And then the code in here will run. So we're going to check if the furthest right bar has the same open time as our global variable. We're then going to check, we're then going to set the global variable to be the time of the new bar. And we are going to call our on bar function. Okay, so that's how we've executed this bit of code. It's a really nice and neat way to call the on bar function every time there's a new bar. So we'll compile that and see if that creates any errors. It doesn't. So now we need to go over to the MT4 terminal and test it out and see whether we've solved our problem. We might not have done. I'm doing this, sort of live. I'm showing you how this all works. So I don't know for 100% whether this is going to fix the problem. But if we get our lesson 8 here, we put our visual mode, we'll slow it down again, and we'll run it on the exact same period. And you can see here, the first thing you'll notice is we haven't actually opened anything up yet. And I'm going to speed this up. In fact, I'm going to run it through really quick. And let's have a look whether this worked. So we've got here our momentum indicator. I'm just going to put on here the threshold line to make it a little bit easier for us. Excuse me. So we're going to give a line here at 100, so we can see where the crossover happens. So you can see we didn't open all the bars straight away, and we're going to zoom in here to see where the crossovers did happen. So we opened up a buy trade, as you would expect. We've on this bar here, it's hard to see here without zooming in any further, but you can see here the line very briefly, momentum went above 100. It went to 100.0022, so only just above, and that actually triggered a buy trade on the next bar. Sadly though, immediately went back below there, so it's closed it, and then the momentum indicator has gone back above there, and we've opened up and immediately opened up another buy trade, which has lasted for a considerably long time. So that is actually working. It's a function of this is whipsawing basically. You might have heard that term before. We've been whipsawed twice here with our EA, and we've opened a couple of bad trades. We've now opened a buy trade here, which holds until we get over here. Now when it does get over here, we get a few more whipsaws. As you can see, it's very close to that line, and then we open a sell trade, which actually you can see this long buy trade here is pretty good. That's it's a loser. It's not that good, but this sell trade here is pretty decent, and you can see here that the momentum indicators kept us in to a really nice downtrend, and then took us out. It's not took us out to the bottom. There's no way of knowing here if that's the end of the trend or not. You're always going to lose some of your hard-won profits, but here we have it's taken out. Let's have a look. How far down have we gone? It's a pretty big. That's a pretty whopper. That's a big whopper. That is 170 pips on there. So if we look on the results tab and the graph, you can see how that's happened. So you can see we've done some pretty awful trades. We've been whipsawed, or they've not really given us anything. And then we've had one big winner, which is just dwarfed the others. And you can see here again that the profit of those, so most of them are, broadly speaking, losers. You can see this one, you can see, let's see that one, buy number 3. That was the one that was held quite a long time. So we'll look for number 3, buy there. When that closed, here, the order number 3, it lost to 70 pence, but then the one that held in, number 6, the one that held on right till we had the right crossover was trade number 5, and that was where's that trade gone? Where's that sell? Be that one, that's a buy. Number 6, sell. And when number 6 closed, there we go. Number 6 closed for a tidy $14 profit. And number 7, you can't take too much from that because it did open. Where is number 7? Where did that open? Can't see that on the chart. I don't know what happened there, but you can't take too much of it because it's been closed on the stop. You can also see here that that our bar time is working, because you can see here we only open and close bars at 15-minute intervals. So that tells us that the new bar function is working. and it's limiting our trades to the 15 when a new bar opens on the 15-minute chart. So that's really good news. The whipsawing and that kind of thing, we'd have to cover later down the line through filters or something else you might have to code in your EA. Crucially, though, you don't want to miss trades like this where you've got nice momentum on the down direction that starts to really gain further momentum, and finally gets you a winner. And you can see here this buy trade, so this 7th trade here, because every time we close a trade on this current EA, we open a new one. The 7th trade actually opens up on here because we've had a crossover on the upside. So on the open of this bar, when this bar closes, we've opened a buy trade, and you can see here a bit of drawdown, 28 pips, but then it's ridden us through a really nice uptrend, and you can see this is how this picked up on the stop. So the key question for the momentum indicator here is, where will it take us out? Is it going to allow this price to come all the way back down here and lose, or are we going to get some profit here in the region of probably 40-50 pips? You'd have to extend your time frame here. If you extend it here, you could find that out. But that's the basics of debugging with MT4 and using the visual tester. Now, if you're trying to backtest for to test an EA that is finished and does work, but you want to know how well does it work, the first thing you need to do is put your data to every tick, and I suggest you do it with that visual mode on. If you're confident that the EA works as you expect it to, you don't need that. I suggest you look at the average spread from your broker, and for something like the pound dollar, it's going to be around 10 points. And I also suggest that you do it for a considerably long time. Now, just because we've got 78 million pieces of data that go all the way back to 2001 doesn't mean you should immediately go back to 2001 and do a 20-year back test, because you will have spent that data. And data is really crucial to your developing process. I am going to cover in the MQL4 201 course how to do proper backtesting and optimization, because that's really, once you've coded an EA, that's where you can actually destroy a good EA. So you need to have that process right. But for very, very simple terms here, what I suggest you do is you need to have a backtest period that gives you at least 100 trades, and but you don't want to use much more data than that, and I would save 100 trades worth of data for out of sample testing. So that is data that you don't do any optimization on, and you use it once you've optimized your EA. So that's all we've got time for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this one. We now have a working and fully fledged EA. Now this EA does work now. You could, in theory, you could run it. It has entry condition, it has exit condition, and it will run. It doesn't have a stop loss and take profit, but there are many EAs out there that don't, and they work on the basis of entry and exit signals. So it's a very basic but fully functioning EA, and that's, in the first 8 lessons that we've had together, that's all it's taken to create your first EA. So I really hope that you do go back over the material, code that up from scratch yourself, because that will really help to embed the learning, and we'll keep developing that EA from here. But you can see now we have something that's fully functioning. We've debugged it, we've made it work, we've seen some results, and now we just need to add some cool features to it, which require a bit more theory and a bit more depth to what we're doing. So in the next video, we're going to cover some of that. We're going to look at 2 things which are really key to programming. I didn't put them in the basics part at the start of this program, because they can get a bit complicated and a bit confusing at the start, so you don't necessarily need to know them. And those things are loops and lists, and we're going to look at what loops are. We're going to use those loops to program in a better way to find and close the orders that your EA has opened. And we're going to cover some background on lists, which are in coding terms, they're usually called arrays. You've seen me say that we're using the 0 bar and we're going back bar by using the number 1, and maybe you've been a bit unsure about what I'm talking about there. So we will cover that as the third item for next week's lesson. So as always, if you have any questions, drop it in the comment section below. I try and answer as many as I can. And also head over to the free Toolkit for Traders forum. There's hundreds of members on there all going through this course. They're talking about it, different ideas. So it's a great place to go there, share what you know and share your questions as well. And just to let you know as well, coming up this month, I'm going to be dropping an EA for the channel, but I'm going to code it live. I'm going to spend a couple of hours coding it from scratch, much like we have done with this series. But I'm going to code it from scratch in front of you, so it's not going to be broken up. I'm going to be going quite fast paced, but it's an opportunity for you to see how you can code it all the way from scratch. And at the end, we'll all have a brand new EA that we can run away with and test and use. And as always as well, if you like the video, then like the video. It's really nice and encouraging for me. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the videos that I put out. And as I've said before, drop your comments and questions in the section below. And until next time, keep well.